how come that's like like everything you say, everything you're in for, so it's a good talk, and you think you can work.
Teachers play a very important role within society. Education is a core pillar, really, of society, isn't it? Do you think, despite that, that teachers are valued enough within society?
In a word, no, they're not. I think that there are different parts of society that do value teachers. I think that the government certainly aren't one of them, and I think students are the people who you look at as the core, obviously, reason for having teachers, and they very much appreciate teachers. I think when I first trained as a teacher, 2012, I was young and impressionable, straight out of uni, and I'd watched Coach Carter and thought I could change the world. And you have this idea of teaching as the most difficult people to control will be the children. They're the ones that will hate teachers, and that everyone else in the world, the parents, will see the value in teachers, the rest of the school will see the value, the government obviously see the value, because that's when teachers are integral to our society. It ended up being a bit the reverse of that, where the people that I definitely found were most appreciative of my time were the 13, 14-year-olds that were lacking confidence, that couldn't, as an English teacher as well, the people that couldn't read or write to the level they needed to apply for jobs, or people who couldn't express their views, their thoughts and feelings. And they, by the time I'd finished with them, they felt that enough appreciation to say to me, "Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Mangat, for helping me. You've given me the confidence to be myself, or given me the confidence to start writing poetry, and I never thought I'd do that."
If we talk about a teacher's salary, they're not really paid that much in comparison to higher earners within society, like doctors and lawyers. But in places like Northern Europe, for example, they're paid a lot more, and in a way valued more because of that. They have a higher standard of living. Do you think teachers should be earning more?
Well, I don't think that anyone gets into teaching for the pay, just to start off with. It's one of those professions, again, similar to nursing, doctors, and lots of other professions, where the type of person that goes into it does it with the view that they can do some good. Having said that, I did my PGC in Bristol in 2012, and a lot of the people, about 4 people in the initial year, did their first year of teaching abroad. I think one was in Switzerland, one was in Sweden, and someone went to Hong Kong. And they were earning more money than me, and I was thinking at the time, we're equally trained. I mean, especially at the start of the career, we all had identical training. They're currently just earning a lot more money than me halfway through our first year, and I'm thinking to myself, why? But having said that, I think that teachers pay, a lot of people have this misconception that the number that you get at the end of the year, your average salary, 20 grand, 25 grand, 30 grand, whatever, is how you should judge teachers. And I don't think it's like that, because the salary doesn't take into account the fact that we work throughout the holidays. I mean, holidays is something that people say, you get 6 weeks off in the summer and you get a week off every now and then. Therefore, it makes sense for you to not be getting that much money because you only work in the school term time. I mean, 6 weeks in the summer, you'd be lucky to have half of that when you're off. When you add in the other things, marking, I mean, takes up so many hours in the evenings and the weekends, and you're sitting there. Obviously, I don't begrudge it; it's part of the job. But a lot of the time, you're sitting there in the evening marking. I mean, 30 kids in each class, say on average, you've got 6 classes. That's 180 books every week. It has to happen in the evenings because you can't do it in the day. So the salary reflects that. Once you take into account those extra hours, and then parents' evenings, student meetings, after school clubs, because all teachers are expected to run an after school club, which again, I don't begrudge it. I loved it. I helped out with the football team and it was brilliant. But once you factor in all those, your wage per hour starts to go down, 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 and you're looking at sort of lower and minimum wage jobs. And that's something that I know a lot of shocking statistics come out saying you could work at, and doing a shelf stacking job or whatever in a supermarket and you'd be earning more than teachers. Once you take that into account, it is shocking.
The thing about education is that it really hasn't advanced that much in a way in how it's taught over the last few hundred years. If you look at a picture of a Victorian classroom, for example, they're sat behind desks, they're looking at a blackboard. Today, if you look at a picture of a classroom, they're sat behind desks looking at an electronic whiteboard. But they're still learning from textbooks, they're still sitting behind those desks. There isn't any freedom for them to, do anything different. Do you feel like the whole system constrains teachers and pupils at the same time?
So I think you're half right in that assumption. There is definitely an attempt to move away from that, that I've seen certainly when I was learning to become a teacher, and I've been encouraged since I've since I've qualified in the few years I was teaching, to use other methods. I mean, you need to be aware, first and foremost, who are your students? How do they learn? What works for them? And that's something that once you look at them, you can tell which students will be audio learners. They'll listen to you and they'll take it in. Some students have to be visual. Some students, they prefer to move around, they're kinesthetic learners. And so you do break up that structure when you have activities, group work, you have students moving around, you have students, doing post-it notes on the board and mixing it up. And it has to not be a gimmick, it has to be useful. But I found very much that is a useful way of learning. Teachers who do use textbooks all lesson, that is something that I think is not encouraged anymore in general, especially for I'm talking lower school, key stage 3 younger students. Having said that, when you get to the older students, GCSE age, there is that pressure, that all-encompassing straitjacket that, because most schools are academies now, they are judged ultimately on results. This system turns students into figures. They are a product on which teachers and the establishment are judged. So you don't want to take risks. If your appraisal, your next year's pay relies on your students getting a grade, then it is a bit scary to say, oh, let's go and do a new type of exercise where we get the iPads out and film things. That's not to say I wouldn't do it. I have done it. I still do it. But I can see why there would be teachers who are more prescriptive, because it feels like you're in control. If you're at the front, if you are there talking to the children in a didactic way, you're there like, this is the answer, write down my opinion, as long as you write it in the exam, you'll be fine. That is a worry. And I think that's something that, although Ofsted have been at pains to say in the last few years that they don't have a certain way, a model of what classes should be like, there is still the worry. I mean, head teachers obviously are their account at the end of the day, so they are putting pressure, quite rightly, well, understandably I'd say, not necessarily rightly, but understandably, putting pressure on the teachers to do it in this very safe way, as you say, that has worked for hundreds of years.
I suppose the one group of people within society who have the biggest influence on education and how it's done are politicians. Mm-hmm. And they're predominantly the one type of people that have no experience of how education works and what teachers go through and what pupils go through. Yeah. So do you think politicians are the best placed for influencing and deciding how we educate our kids?
Education and healthcare, in my opinion, should be outside politics, because everyone needs them at all times. I think if you control education, you control power, you control the future, because you can stop people from making it. And there are, with the talk of grammar schools coming back, it's genuinely, we're going back to this draconian two-tier society again. And people can say that it gives a chance for people to escape poverty or whatever, however they want to frame that decision. But politicians need to understand, and I'm sure a lot of them do understand, that education is something that should be universal. It should be equal. Capitalism works in business because no one cares about the business that goes out of business. No one cares about the shop or the bank or the food store that goes out of business. People look at the general market and say, oh, the market's improved. But you can't do that with children. You can't say, oh, we won't care about that school in Hackney that the children all get F's and U's and they don't know anything about life. Because the average climate in our country, we're getting smarter. A lot of parents I see feel that their children are failing. They're worried that their children are failing. They're giving them extra. I've been hired as a private tutor in the past for students that are getting B's because their parents are worried that they're not getting the A's, the A stars. They're not going to go to Oxford. They're not going to Cambridge. If you create this climate where you're always a failure unless you're looking upwards, then people are going to spend their whole lives worried that they're failures. It starts when you're young, and I think politicians should be looking at schools as something that is universally supportive for young people. They should be looking at schools and saying, what can we do across the board?